The silence in my house is a monster. It has teeth and claws, and it's been chewing on the edges of my sanity ever since I found Lily's bed empty. They tell you that a grandmother's love is a safe harbor, a gentle place. They don't tell you it can also be the weapon that destroys you, wielded by the very people you died to protect. I let my granddaughter stay over while her parents fought. I should have done so much more than just let her stay. I never should have left her alone. Comment on which city you're watching from and subscribe to the channel, because I promise you, the truth behind that empty bed is darker than any shadow in this house. My daughter, Sarah, sits across from me at the kitchen table, her face a pale, tear-streaked mask. She hasn't spoken a full sentence in an hour, just sips her cold coffee and stares at the floral pattern on the vinyl tablecloth, the same one I've had since she was a little girl smearing grape jelly on it with her chubby fingers. The police have come and gone, leaving behind a residue of polite suspicion and fine, black fingerprint dust on every surface, a grime that seems to have settled deep in my soul. They ask me the same questions a dozen times, their voices patient, but their eyes holding a professional skepticism that made my skin crawl. Mrs. Gable, can you walk us through the evening one more time? What time exactly did you leave the house? Did you lock the door? Yes. 9:15. Yes, of course, I locked the door. I checked it twice. But when I came back, the deadbolt was still thrown, but the door was slightly ajar, just a crack, held open by the latch. It made no sense. A cold dread, slick and oily, had washed over me before I even stepped inside. Mark, my son-in-law, paces the living room like a caged animal. His voice, when he speaks to the detective on the phone, is tight with a frantic energy that feels performed. He keeps running his hands through his perfectly styled hair, his handsome face twisted into a caricature of grief. He was always the smooth one, the charmer who swept my practical Sarah off her feet with a whirlwind romance and promises of a life she'd only read about in novels. Now, that smoothness feels like a layer of grease over something rotten. We just want our little girl back, he says into the phone, his voice cracking on cue. But when he hangs up and his eyes meet mine across the room, they are cold. Not sad, not panicked. Cold and accusing. It's my fault, that's what they're both thinking, and the worst part is, I think it too. The guilt is a physical weight, pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. It all started 2 nights ago with a phone call that tore through the quiet evening like a siren. Sarah's voice was thin and frayed, like a rope stretched to its breaking point. Mom? Can you take Lily for the night? In the background, I could hear Mark shouting, his voice a low, guttural roar that didn't even sound human. It wasn't just arguing. It was the sound of something shattering. Their marriage, once a picture-perfect postcard they mailed out every Christmas, had been crumbling for months. Fights about money, about his late nights, about 100 little things that had festered into a giant, gangrenous wound. Of course, honey. Is everything okay? A stupid, useless question. The sound in the background was my answer. No, it's not. It's bad, Mom. I don't want her to hear this. Her voice broke, and I could picture her huddled in a closet or a pantry trying to hide. I'll bring her over in 20 minutes. When they arrived, the tension was so thick you could have sliced it with a knife. Mark stayed in the car, a sleek, dark SUV that seemed too aggressive for our quiet street. The engine was running, the headlights cutting 2 sharp beams through the twilight, pinning me to my own front porch. He just stared straight ahead, his profile a rigid silhouette against the dashboard's glow. Sarah practically dragged Lily up the walkway, a small pink backpack clutched in her hand. Lily, my sweet, perceptive Lily, looked like a tiny refugee, a soldier marching into a battle she didn't understand. Her big blue eyes, usually so full of light and mischief, were wide and uncertain. She didn't run to hug me like she usually did. She just stood there, her small hand gripping her mother's, her knuckles white. Be a good girl for Grandma, sweet pea, Sarah said, her voice unnaturally bright, a terrible imitation of cheerfulness. She knelt, her knees popping, and hugged Lily tightly, a desperate, clinging hug that lasted a little too long. It wasn't a hug of comfort. It was a hug of farewell. Mommy and Daddy just need to talk some things out. We'll pick you up in the morning. She kissed Lily's forehead, then stood up and looked at me. Her eyes were hollowed out sockets of exhaustion and despair. Thanks, Mom. You're a lifesaver. She turned and practically ran back to the car, not looking back once. I watched the red taillights disappear down the street, a knot of deep, visceral unease tightening in my stomach. I should have asked more questions. I should have insisted she stay, that they both come inside. But I didn't. I just took my granddaughter's small, cold hand in mine and led her into the warmth of my home, a place I thought was the safest in the world. That night, Lily was quiet. Too quiet. She's only 8, but she has an old soul. She feels things deeply, absorbing the tensions around her like a little sponge. We made her favorite chocolate chip cookies, the ones with extra dark chocolate chunks, but she barely ate one, just crumbled the edges onto her plate. We read her favorite book, The Princess and the Shadow Dragon, but her eyes kept drifting to the dark window as if expecting to see her parents' car pull up at any moment. "Is Mommy sad at me?" she asked, her voice a tiny whisper as I tucked her into the guest room bed, the same one Sarah used to sleep in as a girl. The sheets smelled of lavender and sunshine, a scent I cultivated to bring comfort. Tonight, it felt like a lie. "Oh no, sweetheart." "Of course not," I said, stroking her soft blonde hair away from her forehead. "Mommy and Daddy are just tired. They have grown-up problems that have nothing to do with you. They love you more than anything in the whole wide world." She seemed to accept that, cuddling her worn teddy bear, Barnaby. But then she said something that stuck with me, a tiny splinter under my skin I couldn't dig out. "Mommy says sometimes we have to have secret adventures to keep everyone safe." "A secret adventure?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light, playful. "What kind of adventure?" She just shook her head, her eyes already half closed with a weariness that was too old for her face. "It's a secret," she mumbled into her pillow and fell asleep. I sat by her bed for a long time, watching the gentle rise and fall of her chest. The house was still. The only sound was the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall, a sound that had measured out my life for 50 years. It usually brought me comfort, a sense of permanence. That night, it sounded like a countdown. The thought of Sarah and Mark, tearing each other apart with words while their beautiful daughter worried in her sleep, filled me with a familiar, helpless mix of anger and sorrow. Sarah was my only child. I'd raised her to be strong, to be independent, ever since her father passed. Seeing her so broken, so dependent on a man who seemed to cause her so much pain, was a constant ache in my heart. It was around 9 o'clock when I realized my mistake, my blood pressure medication. I'd forgotten to pick up the refill at the pharmacy. It closed at 9:30. My doctor, a stern man half my age, was always on my case about taking it at the same time every night. "Consistency is key, Evelyn." It was foolish, I know. I could have skipped one night. But in that moment, in the swirl of anxiety about Sarah and Lily, following a routine felt like the only solid thing I could hold on to. A small act of control in a world that felt like it was spinning off its axis. I peeked into the guest room. Lily was sound asleep, her breathing deep and even, Barnaby the bear clutched tight under her arm. The pharmacy was a 5-minute drive away. 10-15 minutes, tops. She'd never even know I was gone. I hesitated at my front door, a flicker of doubt, a voice in my head that whispered, "Don't go." "Don't be silly, Evelyn," I told myself, pushing it down. "You're being a nervous old woman. She's perfectly safe." That's the thought that haunts my every waking moment, the soundtrack to my own personal hell. "She's perfectly safe." I scribbled a quick note, "Back in a flash, sweetie. Love, Grandma," and left it on the kitchen counter where she'd see it if, by some miracle, she woke up. I locked the front door, heard the solid, reassuring click of the deadbolt, and hurried to my car. The night air was cool and crisp. The street was empty, bathed in the gentle, hazy orange glow of the streetlights. Everything was normal. Everything was fine. 15 minutes. That's all it was. I timed it. I drove to the pharmacy, got my prescription, and drove straight back, a strange urgency pressing on me. But as I pulled into my driveway, my headlights swept across the front of the house, and my heart stopped. The door. It was open. Just a sliver, a black, vertical wound in the white facade of my house. I told the police I ran. It wasn't a run. It was a clumsy, frantic scramble. I flew out of the car, my purse falling to the pavement, my keys clattering. I didn't even register it. I burst through the door, my own name a strangled cry on my lips. "Lily? Lily." Silence. The monster was born in that silence. The house was still, but it was a predatory stillness now. The note was still on the counter, A half-eaten cookie sat on a plate. Everything was exactly as I had left it, except for two things. The guest room window, which I knew I had closed and locked because of the evening chill, was wide open, the lace curtains fluttering in the slight breeze like ghostly hands. And Lily was gone. Her bed was empty, the covers thrown back as if she'd left in a hurry. Barnaby the bear lay on the floor, one of his button eyes staring up at the ceiling, a silent, glassy witness to an unspeakable act. In the present, Sarah finally speaks. Her voice is raw, scraped thin. The police found her backpack. I flinch as if struck. Where? In the bushes at the end of the street, she says, her eyes finally lifting to meet mine. There's no shared grief in them, only a blazing, bottomless well of accusation. It was empty. They think someone was watching the house. They think they waited for you to leave and then they took her, Mom. She chokes on the words, a sob catching in her throat. How could you leave her? How could you be so careless? The words hit me with the force of a physical blow. I have no defense. She is right. How could I? I am the grandmother. The safe harbor. And I let the storm in. Mark comes back into the kitchen, his phone in his hand. The detective wants to talk to you again. Evelyn, he says, his tone formal, distant, as if speaking to a stranger who just wrecked his car. He has more questions about the timeline. I just nod, feeling numb. The walls of my cozy kitchen, decorated with Lily's crayon drawings taped to the fridge, feel like they are closing in on me. One drawing, one she made last week, catches my eye. It's of our family. Me, Sarah, Mark, and Lily, all holding hands under a big yellow sun. But there's a new detail I hadn't noticed before, one my mind had dismissed. In the corner, almost hidden behind a tree, is a tall, dark figure. A man with no face, just a black scribble where his head should be. I feel a chill that has nothing to do with the open window or the evening air. It's a cold that comes from deep inside. I spend the next day in a gray, surreal fog, answering questions, replaying every second of that night in my head until the memories are worn smooth and useless. The detectives, a man named Harris and a younger woman named Chen, are patient but persistent. They walk through the house again. They take more pictures. They ask about my neighbors, about anyone who might have seemed unusual lately, anyone with a grudge. Did you notice any strange cars on the street in the last few days, Mrs. Gable? Detective Harris asks, his pen poised over his notepad. And suddenly, a memory surfaces through the fog. A car, I say, my voice raspy. The night before, when Sarah dropped Lily off. I close my eyes, trying to bring the image into focus. It was parked across the street, further down, under the old oak tree. It was dark, but it looked expensive, polished. I remember thinking it was odd for our little street. What kind of car? I don't know cars. A sedan. Dark blue or black. Sleek, the engine was running. I thought maybe it was one of Mark's clients or something, but it pulled away right after Sarah and Mark drove off. I hadn't thought much of it then, but now the memory feels sinister. Harris makes a note. And you didn't see it again the night Lily went missing? No, the street was empty when I left for the pharmacy. I pause, my mind grasping for anything. But my neighbor, Mr. Henderson, across the street. He sits on his porch a lot. He sees everything. Maybe he saw something. Later that afternoon, Detective Harris comes back alone. He looks grim. He stands in my doorway and doesn't ask to come in. We spoke to Mr. Henderson, he says, avoiding my eyes. He did see a car like the one you described. He saw it on both nights. My blood runs cold, turning to slush in my veins. Both nights? Yes. And on the night Lily disappeared. He saw it pull away from the curb just a few minutes after you left for the pharmacy. His gaze finally meets mine, and it's full of a weary pity. He also saw the guest room light go on and then off again, right before the car left. The room starts to spin. So it wasn't random. Someone was watching. They waited for me to leave. They went inside. The thought is so terrifying I have to grip the doorframe to stay upright. They targeted my house. They targeted my granddaughter. But why? We're not wealthy. I'm a retired librarian living on a pension. Sarah is a first-grade teacher. Mark was in sales, something to do with tech. But Sarah had mentioned in a hushed, ashamed tone a few weeks ago that he'd been laid off. Financial trouble, I murmur, the words escaping my lips before I can stop them. I'm sorry, Harris asks, leaning in slightly. My son-in-law, Mark. He lost his job a few months ago. They've been fighting about money. A lot. The words feel like a betrayal, spilling family secrets to a stranger, but the secret, faceless man in Lily's drawing flashes in my mind again. Harris's expression doesn't change, but I see a flicker of something in his eyes. He's putting pieces together. We'll look into it, Mrs. Gable. That evening, Sarah and Mark are at my house again. The pretense of a united, grieving front is gone. It has crumbled into dust. They sit on opposite ends of the long sofa, a chasm of acrid silence between them. I can't stand it. The not knowing is a physical pain. What aren't you telling me? I ask, my voice stronger than I expect, cutting through the silence. I look directly at Sarah, then at Mark. The police know someone was watching the house. Someone who knew my routine. Who does Mark owe money to? Who would want to harm a child to get to you? Mark jumps to his feet, his face flushing a blotchy red. What are you implying, Evelyn? That this is my fault? My daughter is missing, and you're pointing fingers at me? I'm not pointing fingers, I retort, my own dormant anger rising to meet his. I'm asking questions. That little girl is my whole world, and I need to know everything if we're going to find her. Secrets are going to get her killed, Sarah bursts into ragged tears. Stop it. Both of you. This isn't helping. She turns on me, her face contorted with a grief so profound it looks like hate. This happened in your house, Mom. On your watch. Maybe if you weren't so. So. She trails off, but I know the word she was going to use. Old, forgetful, useless. The accusation hangs in the air, thick and poisonous. I retreat, the fight draining out of me, replaced by the familiar, heavy cloak of guilt. Maybe she's right. Maybe my age, my brief moment of selfish concern over a pill, is the only reason Lily is gone. The thought is unbearable, a self-inflicted wound that festers and weeps. Subscribe now, you won't believe the twist that's coming. I can't sleep. Sleep is a country I've been exiled from. I wander the silent house, every creak of the floorboards amplifying my loneliness and my spiraling fear. I end up in the guest room, standing over Lily's empty bed. The scent of her, that sweet, childish smell of soap and sleep, is already fading. I smooth the crumpled sheets, my hand tracing the indentation where her head lay. I need to feel close to her, to find some clue, some piece of her that was left behind. I pick up Barnaby the bear from the floor where he'd fallen. He feels strangely lumpy and firm in the middle. Not the soft, squishy friend he should be. My fingers, clumsy with age and anxiety, probe the bear's soft, plush body. There's something hard inside, tucked deep in the stuffing of his back. A small, rectangular object. My heart begins a frantic, irregular rhythm against my ribs. With trembling hands, I find the seam at the back of the bear's neck. A few stitches are looser than the rest, done in a different color thread. I pull at the thread, and the seam opens easily. Reaching inside the cottony guts of the bear, my fingers close around a small, cheap-looking prepaid phone. A burner phone. My breath catches in my throat. Where would an 8-year-old get a phone like this? It feels alien in my hand, a piece of a dark, adult world that has no place in my granddaughter's life. I press the power button, praying it has a charge. The screen flickers to life, painfully bright in the dim room. There are no saved contacts, just a string of recent text messages from a single, unsaved number. My hands shake so badly I can barely read them. The first one, from 3 days ago, says, "Is it set?" Grandma has to agree. My breath catches my mind, refuses to process the words. I scroll up. My thumbs slick with sweat. The next message, from the night Sarah called me. She said, "Yes, Lily is coming tonight. Remember the plan, stick to the plan." The plan? What plan? My mind is a frantic scramble of disjointed thoughts. Trying to make sense of the impossible, I keep scrolling. Each new message a blow to the chest. A message from the night Lily disappeared, sent at 8:45 p.m. Her pills are in her coat pocket. She'll have to go out soon. Be ready, her pills, my blood pressure medication. I always keep it in the little ceramic dish on my nightstand. A gift from Lily made in art class, but that night. That night, I couldn't find it. I'd searched the nightstand, my purse, the bathroom cabinet. Before finally assuming I'd let it run out and needed a refill, I had been so flustered, so anxious about Sarah, that my own forgetfulness seemed perfectly plausible. But I hadn't mentioned that to Sarah. I had just assumed I was being a dotty old woman on a gut instinct so strong it feels like a physical pull. I stumbled to the hall closet and fumbled for my coat, the one I'd worn that afternoon when I went for a walk. I plunged my hand into the pocket, my fingers closed around the familiar plastic bottle of my medication. It's almost full. Someone hadn't just known I would leave, they had engineered it. They had hidden my pills to create the need. Knowing my rigid adherence to routine would do the rest. I feel sick. A wave of nausea washes over me and my legs give out. I sink to the floor. The little phone clutched in my hand. There are more messages. I force my blurry eyes to focus through the tears that are now streaming down my face. A message sent at 9:10 p.m. while I was at the pharmacy. Grandma is gone. You have 15 minutes. The window is unlocked. Tell Lily. It's part of the secret adventure. The secret adventure. Lily's innocent words from that night come screaming back to me. No longer a splinter, but a shard of glass in my heart. Mommy says sometimes we have to have secret adventures to keep everyone safe. The final message on the phone is a single, chilling word, a reply to the unsaved number. It was sent from this phone. From inside my house. It was sent by my sweet, trusting Lily. It says, okay, but it's the incoming number that shatters my world into a million irreparable pieces. My mind, my heart, my very soul rejects it, but my eyes cannot lie. I know that number. It's been in my own phone for years. With a shaking thumb, I navigate to my own contacts list, my heart pounding a slow, heavy funeral drum in my chest. I scroll to the letters, and there it is, the number that planned the kidnapping of my granddaughter. The number that orchestrated my torment, the number that texted an 8-year-old child to prepare for her own abduction. It was Sarah, my daughter. The floor feels like it's tilting. The walls of the room breathing in and out. The silence of the house is no longer a monster. It is a vacuum sucking all the air from my lungs, all the life from my body. Betrayal is too small a word. This is an annihilation of the soul. My daughter, my Sarah. She didn't just let this happen. She planned it. She weaponized my love, my home, my age. She used her own child as a pawn and her own mother as the perfect, gullible, guilt-ridden scapegoat. The carefully constructed grief on her face, the accusations, the tears, all of it was a lie, a monstrous, elaborate performance. She and Mark weren't fighting that night. Not in the way I thought. They were conspiring. They put Lily to bed in my house, told her it was a game, and then sent someone to come and get her the moment I was gone. The open window, the missing backpack. It was all theater, designed to create a crime scene that pointed away from them and straight at a random, faceless predator. With my carelessness as the catalyst, I don't know how long I sit there on the floor, the phone clutched in my hand like a venomous snake. An hour. 2. The sun is beginning to rise, casting pale gray light into the room, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. I feel 100 years old. The love I had for my daughter, a vast and unconditional ocean that has defined my life, has receded in an instant, leaving behind a barren, toxic, radioactive wasteland. I hear a car pull into the driveway, footsteps on the porch, a key in the lock. Sarah's key. The door opens, and she walks in, followed by Mark. They must have come to play their next scene in this sickening drama, to offer more false comfort, to check on the state of their crumbling decoy. I get to my feet, my joints aching, my body filled with a cold, hard resolve I didn't know I possessed. It feels like a steel rod has been inserted into my spine. I walk out of the guest room and into the living room to face them. The burner phone is in my hand, held out in front of me. Sarah sees me and her practiced mask of concern falls into place. Mom, you're up early. Are you okay? You look awful. I know the truth, Sarah, I say. My voice is quiet, but it cuts through the morning stillness like a shard of glass. It doesn't even sound like my own. Her face falters for a fraction of a second, a tiny crack in the porcelain facade. Mark steps forward, his own concerned son-in-law face perfectly arranged. Evelyn, you're not making any sense. You're exhausted. We're all exhausted. I hold up the phone. Barnaby had a secret, I say. The color drains from Sarah's face. It happens so fast it's like watching a time-lapse video of a flower wilting. She stares at the phone, then at me, her eyes wide with dawning animal horror. Mark's facade doesn't just crack. It shatters. It's replaced by a flicker of pure cornered rat panic. The show is over. Where is she? I demand, the words raw, ripped from my throat. Where is my granddaughter? Sarah collapses onto the sofa, her body racked with shuddering sobs. But these are not the tears of a grieving mother. These are the gut-wrenching, ugly sobs of the guilty, of the damned. Mark just stands there, defeated, his shoulders slumped, the smooth charmer finally gone, replaced by a weak, pathetic man. We were trying to protect her, Sarah wails, her words muffled by her hands. We were trying to protect everyone. The story comes tumbling out then, a pathetic, sordid tale of greed, stupidity, and desperation. Mark hadn't just lost his job. He had made a series of disastrous, high-risk investments trying to get rich quick, and had ended up owing an astronomical amount of money to very dangerous people. Loan sharks who didn't file court papers. They were watching the house. Mark says, his voice a hoarse whisper. Our house. They knew Lily's school schedule. They sent pictures, Evelyn. Pictures of Lily on the playground. Their plan in their terrified, morally bankrupt minds was a stroke of genius. They couldn't go to the police because that would only make the loan sharks angrier. So they decided to stage a kidnapping. They would get Lily out of the city, away from the threat, and send her to stay with Mark's sister in Oregon, who was in on the scheme. They used my house because no one would ever suspect them. They created a fake crime, a fake suspect, and a grieving family, all to hide their daughter in plain sight. And me? I ask, my voice trembling with a rage so profound it makes me dizzy. What was my role in this little play of yours? The heartbroken grandmother? The senile old woman who left her granddaughter alone? You let me believe she was taken, that she could be hurt or worse. You let me sit in this house and tear myself apart with guilt second by second. You used my love for her as a weapon against me. Mom, we didn't know what else to do. Sarah cries, looking up at me, her face a grotesque mess of tears and shame. We were so scared. We were going to tell you, once it was all over. Once what was over? I spit the words at her. Once you'd paid them off with what? Ransom money? Were you going to set up a fake ransom demand too? Mark flinches and his eyes dart away. That was it. That was the next step. They were going to fake a ransom demand to get money from his wealthy parents, who had long ago cut him off for his recklessness. The depth of their deceit is staggering, a bottomless pit. They weren't just protecting Lily. They were trying to solve their money problems with a scheme so cruel, so monstrous, it defies comprehension. The secret adventure, I say, the pieces clicking into place with sickening clarity. You told that sweet, innocent child that this was all a game. You taught her to lie, to keep secrets from her own grandmother. You put her in a car with a stranger in the middle of the night. It wasn't a stranger. Mark insists desperately, grabbing at any straw of justification. It was my sister, Clara. She drove down. Lily knows her. She's safe, Evelyn, I swear. She's safe. Safe. The word is meaningless coming from his lips. Lily is physically safe, perhaps. But what have they done to her spirit? What scars will this secret adventure leave on her trusting little heart? They have mined her innocence for their own selfish ends. I look at my daughter, the baby I held in my arms, the little girl whose scraped knees I bandaged, the teenager whose heartbreaks I mended. I search her face for a trace of the person I thought I knew, but she is a stranger to me now. A hollowed-out version of my child. Her love for her own daughter became so twisted by fear and selfishness that it turned into a form of unimaginable cruelty. Get her, I say, my voice flat and dead. Go to Oregon or call your sister or do whatever you have to do. You have 24 hours to bring Lily back to this house. And then you are going to tell me exactly how you plan to fix the nightmare you've created. I pause, letting the weight of my next words settle on them like a shroud. And if she is not standing in this living room by tomorrow morning, I will take this phone and I will walk into the police station. And I will tell them everything. The next 24 hours are the longest of my life. Sarah and Mark leave without another word. I am alone again in the silent house, but the monster of the unknown is gone. It has been replaced by a vast, aching emptiness. The betrayal is a cancer in my heart, but underneath it, a tiny, desperate flicker of hope for Lily keeps me going. Late the next morning, a car I don't recognize pulls into the driveway. Mark's sister, Clara, a woman I've only met a handful of times at holidays, gets out of the driver's side. She looks tired and ashamed. And then the back door opens. Lily. She hops out of the car, her pink backpack on, looking tired and a little confused, but unharmed. She sees me standing on the porch and her face breaks into a radiant, uncomplicated smile. She runs. "Grandma!" she shouts, her voice the most beautiful sound in the world. She launches herself into my arms. I sink to my knees on the welcome mat and hold her, burying my face in her hair, breathing in her scent of stale car air and crackers, but her. It's her. All the coldness, all the rage melts away in a tidal wave of pure, unconditional love. She is here. She is safe. She is in my arms. I hold her tight, the tears I refuse to shed for myself now flowing freely for her, for the innocence that was so cruelly abused. "I missed you, Grandma," she whispers into my neck. "The secret adventure was okay, but I like your house better." I pull back and look at her beautiful, innocent face. "I missed you more than words can say, sweet pea." Sarah and Mark stand by the car like statues, watching us. They look small and broken and utterly lost. Clara gives me a look of profound, helpless apology before getting back in her car and driving away, leaving them to face the consequences of their actions. I know this is not the end. It is the beginning of something new and difficult and terrible. The trust is shattered, perhaps forever. The family I knew is gone, a ghost that will haunt these rooms. But as I hold my granddaughter's hand and lead her back into the house, my house, her true safe harbor, I know one thing for certain. My love for her is the only truth left standing in the rubble. It is the foundation upon which we will have to rebuild, or the rock on which we will all be broken. The choice is no longer just mine to make, but I will fight to make her a world worthy of her trust, even if it means I have to protect her from her own parents. Comment which part of the story left you speechless.